So, I mean, is the camera maybe more important than a fob, I guess?
Yeah, so that's kind of the discussion that will have to be had once we get that. That's, because there's a lot of different ideas, and then it becomes what's the goal, and then how much money do you want to put in, right? So you're weighing all of those things when we gather that information.
But there is standard practice. I mean, if you look at what the school district does, if you look at the fire department, I mean, step one has typically, in what I've seen, and this is just off my observation, has been key fobs or access control, and then security cameras. If you don't have enough money to do both, I mean, there's a pattern, but I could be wrong. That's the only thing I've observed.
Key fob would only
The gate key.
give you you can't have a key fob unless I'm wrong. On the gate, you would need to have a key fob is for the building, right?
No.
You could.
You can have a key. You can have entrance,
Yeah, but we
electronic
can-
entrance, just like
Yeah.
just like in residential
Right,
apartments,
right.
they open the parking
Yeah.
gate.
Okay, yes, sorry, yeah.
And the question about, is there any, opportunity cost that we already have the fob system, like the system? So now we're just implementing in different departments, do we have an advantage that we already have a system, cost advantage? I always thought we
Doing
did.
a system, it's at different facilities, which require all different installation requirements. It's something we need to explore with the vendor.
Okay, that'd be great.
But it is one of the reasons why I wanna look at them all at the same time, because if there's a measure of, if numbers matter in terms of how things are quoted.
When the village center did it, it was just per door, so it must have there was no other cost associated with the system, correct?
Tyler actually is the one who did it and stuff, maybe you
Yeah.
can comment.
I'm sorry.
I'm just wondering, so we just did the village center in 2018?
Yep.
And it
Or
was
the
cost
past
per
year in
door,
2019.
but was there also a system, like connection fee? We can get to that later, but if you knew off the top of your head.
No, not that I know of. It would just be any maintenance that we would have to have them come on site.
Just wanted to let you know that it's 7:38.
What time do we start?
7:15.
Okay. Anybody else have other questions? None other from the committee members at this moment? Yes.
Is it possible for an employee to go in their own car with the card from one of the village cars and use their number?
Would assume so, unless you had it.
It would be possible.
Are there records kept of which employees took how many gallons on what days?
Yes.
I'd like to request those records.
Thank you, that was interesting information. Trustee Blake?
I was just gonna ask, has there ever been a fluctuation that you had to look into?
There have been, so last year there were a couple instances of an employee that was transposing numbers when they were entering their 4-digit code. So it was a police department employee and it kept coming up as a DPW employee using a police department card.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a relatively easy
Fix, right?
detective
Yeah.
work. I will say there have been instances where a vehicle fueled 3 times in a row, and we had to talk about that. And what happened was they were fueling, at the end of the day, they were fueling all 3 leaf backs. So they had them all lined up, and one person punched their code in and swiped the card, and they fueled, and then they just kept pulling through and fueling. They were trying to be efficient, save some time, so, yeah.
But
We've had conversations and reminders about the importance of using the unique fuel, the unique swipe card for the vehicle and why you can't do that. But other than that, no.
There's never been a violation of the policy or?
Not that I've been able to tell from reviewing field reports.
So that would be a great follow-up is, there was the policies included, and it says at the end of everybody's shift, or whatever, at the end of the day, of the workday, that all vehicles have to be refilled that have been used. And so it would be interesting to see.
It says as necessary. It doesn't
Right.
require each vehicle be fueled at the end of each day.
As necessary, that's just if they've used it, correct? is there under a certain limit of gallons, I mean, how do you
Not
decide
that
that?
we've specifically spelled out, no, it's really a judgment call.
Right, so I think the policy were worth looking at, just to make it very clear and consistent that, like, because as you say, you know, sometimes they'll come in the middle of the night, sometimes, you know, are they doing it consistently at the end of the night? And is there a certain gallon amount, like you used under 5 gallons, and you don't have to do it, but to standardize it a little more, if that made sense. And I do think that we should have a policy that oversees, if we're just talking about fuel consumption right now, but all vehicles. Like, I don't understand why we just have a policy for DPW vehicles if we're the operator of that and the manager of that center. Whoever manages, and it sounds like DPW is doing that, sending out the invoices, I do believe that it should cover all vehicles and all cards. Anybody else? Trustee
I just
Carpenter?
had a question, about salt. In that chart, it looks like, there are several other communities that have formal policies for, salt usage. So do we have,
I wouldn't call them policies, I would say
Okay.
that they have, definite procedures for
Okay.
tracking salt use,
Okay.
as do we.
okay, and that just wasn't included in the packet, or?
Do we have it written?
It is not a policy,
Mhm.
it's a procedure, and Joel can speak better to that, of how we track salt use per storm event.
Can you include it in the next packet
Okay.
of what we do? Like a write-up? And the only other question I had was when people order under $1,000, because it's not going through Joel, and I get that, you still would have a total of the number of sponges you ordered or whatever based on that invoice, correct? You don't have to approve it, but I'm sure you collect them, or we pay them. So what do you do with those supply totals? Whether it's under 1,000, whether Joel has approved it over 1,000, whether it's major, there is a way to total them. Beyond dollars, I'm just wondering, do we do that yet? So like, a blade that's.
Counting the staples and the pencils,
No, I don't mean
there's
that, I
certain
mean like a
thresholds.
blade that's,
audited and
$150, that's under,
Well,
or
I-
300.
I assume when he looks at the bill, he's going,
He
oh,
doesn't do that for under 1,000.
no, he's looking at the bill for
The invoices
reasonableness.
all get assigned account numbers
No, he's not.
by Leanne.
Yeah, they're looking.
So when the invoice comes in, Leanne assigns account numbers to them, so we're looking at what's being ordered, but we're not necessarily counting pens and
I'm not saying
pencils.
tens, I apologize for that. I'm more talking about like, $150, belts and like supplies, not office supplies, I should say. But it sounds like, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong, for the policy, you don't really have to sign off on anything that's under 1,000.
Correct.
But, so you don't really know, you're not,
No, there are things at DPW that is not tracked.
okay.
Why can't the village keep records of mileage of vehicles to determine whether,
Because
how hard is that?
Like to record the mileage number? when
The
you get
driver
picked up?
gets in the vehicle, puts in a mileage, he gets out, he writes the mileage.
Because it's very difficult with most DPW vehicles and equipment to correlate fuel use to mileage.
But for
Because
each,
so-
but for each
because
vehicle,
so-
can't you?
Because so
Because
often,
they idle.
they idle.
It doesn't matter, all communities have that.
Large DPW equipment it's not by the miles, it's by the hours, engine hours.
Like police, right?
No,
Well, police say they mostly idle.
they say that, but it's a vehicle,
They
that's
have
a
an
gas
odometer.
powered vehicle, yeah.
Oh, they have an
Not all of our
odometer?
equipment has odometers.
Oh,
Huh,
correct.
huh.
I just wanna remind everyone it's 7:45.
Yeah,
Well, I do think there's value in that question though, and then we can close up if no one has any different questions, but it's just because you can do two things, you can do mileage or you can do timeout. I know the police department, that's how they justify getting a new car every 4 years, is that their idle time is a certain amount. I know the fire department tracks that. They do track it, I have all the metrics, so you just look at what the fire department does. Anybody else?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Wait,
Second.
are we bringing this back?
Fine.
Well, I would like to see that, if nobody else cares, if we don't.
Why don't they just email us?
Yeah, we'd be happy to send it with a Friday update. We won't be, I didn't have any plan on revisiting until we had more information, particularly on the security and on the, because it's just, we need to have time to do that. We just started hitting the ground running with IT, so they got a laundry list, and we have some other meetings that just got
So
started.
whatever information you find, or maybe just the policies, I'll talk to you offline, and I can just get them for the applicants. Great.
No, the ones that I'm happy to send those out.
Yeah. Okay, then a motion.
Yeah, got a motion and a second, so.
All those in favor? Meeting adjourned, thank you very much. Chair, sorry.
Are you okay?
Uh-oh. See you soon.